$5,000 fine that unraveled an HOA empire. When Karen knocked on my door with a $5,000 fine for illegal hunting, I just smiled. What she didn't know was that this tiny piece of paper would unravel everything, leaving the entire HOA in chaos. You see, they thought they controlled every inch of Green Valley Estates. But there was one thing they didn't control: property law. And once I started digging into those community trails they hiked every morning, I found a secret that could flip the game and take them down for good. Let me tell you how it all went down. The quiet man who challenged a powerhouse. My name is Mason Holloway, 38 years old, and I work remotely as a software engineer for a cybersecurity firm. After 8 years in the military and another 5 working in cramped tech offices in Seattle, I craved space, lots of it. That's why Green Valley Estates seemed perfect on paper. Modern homes on spacious lots backed by miles of forest and just remote enough to feel peaceful without being isolated. The HOA fees were steep, $450 quarterly, but the listing agent assured me it was worth it for the immaculately maintained community spaces and award-winning landscaping. What she conveniently failed to mention was that the Green Valley Estates Association was run by Evelyn Richardson, quite possibly the most controlling 38-year-old to ever wield a rulebook. I first met Evelyn during my second week in the neighborhood when she appeared at my door with a welcome basket that contained more HOA bylaws than actual welcome gifts. "We're so delighted to have new blood in Green Valley," she said with a smile. That one weekend in October, I discovered a large tract of wooded land adjoining our community, an 80-acre stretch of pristine forest with a stream running through it. I spent a Saturday exploring it and decided it looked perfect for deer hunting season, which was approaching. Curious about ownership, I did some research at the county records office. The land belonged to an 83-year-old man named Frank Williams, who had moved to Florida years ago but still maintained ownership. I managed to find his contact information and sent him an email explaining that I was interested in hunting on his property and would respect the land. To my surprise, he replied the next day, "Son, I've owned that land for 50 years, he wrote. "My family used to farm the clearings. Haven't been back there in almost a decade since my arthritis got bad. If you want to hunt there, you have my permission. Just be respectful and send me a picture if you get a nice buck." What I didn't realize at the time was that, for years, Evelyn and several other HOA members had been using Frank's land for their morning hiking routine. They'd created unofficial trails, placed little benches at scenic spots, and even installed bird feeders, all without the actual owner's knowledge or permission. They had essentially claimed the land as their own private nature reserve, despite having no legal right to it. This detail would become important very soon. On a crisp November morning, I headed out before dawn with my rifle and hunting gear. I positioned myself in a clearing that Frank had mentioned was a good spot, waiting patiently as the sun rose. Around 9 in the morning, luck was with me. A healthy 8-point buck appeared at the edge of the clearing. I took the shot cleanly, and the deer went down instantly. As I approached to field dress it, I heard voices coming down one of the trails. Through the trees emerged Evelyn, leading a group of 5 women in expensive athleisure wear, all carrying water bottles and chatting about neighborhood gossip. The moment Evelyn spotted me kneeling beside the deer, her face transformed with horror. "What in God's name are you doing?" she shrieked, fumbling for her phone. "This is a protected area. Who gave you permission to murder animals here?" Before I could explain, she was snapping photos and threatening to call the authorities. "This is absolutely barbaric," she announced to her wide-eyed companions, and completely against Green Valley's commitment to environmental stewardship. I tried to explain that I had the owner's permission, but she cut me off with a dismissive wave. "We manage these nature trails," she insisted, "and hunting is absolutely prohibited." But what happened next made me realize that the HOA didn't just want to control the color of my mailbox. They wanted to control my entire life. 3 days after my encounter with Evelyn in the woods, I found an official-looking envelope stuck to my front door. Inside was a notice of violation from the Green Valley Estates Association, citing me for cruel hunting activities, causing community disturbance, and demanding a fine of $5,000 to be paid within 30 days. My first reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by anger. I knew enough about HOA regulations to understand they had no jurisdiction over activities conducted outside HOA property, especially on private land where I had explicit permission from the owner. I called Sarah immediately, who sighed heavily when I told her about the fine. That sounds like Evelyn. She's been talking about this at the school where I teach, making you sound like some kind of serial killer. Several parents are worried there's a dangerous element in the neighborhood now. Sarah lowered her voice, even though we were on the phone. Look, Evelyn's been leading her Green Valley wellness walks through those woods for years. She uses it as a selling point when new people move in. Exclusive access to private nature trails. I don't think she's ever bothered to check who actually owns the land. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for the following evening, and I decided to attend and challenge the fine. When I arrived at the community center, the small meeting room was unusually full. Evelyn sat at the head of the table, flanked by Marcus Bennett, the 42-year-old vice president who worked for the local government and functioned primarily as Evelyn's yes man, and Richard Cooper, the 55-year-old HOA treasurer, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. I recognized several other neighbors, including Jessica Parker, a 40-year-old woman known for reporting even the most minor HOA violations with zealous enthusiasm. "Ah, Mr. Holloway has decided to join us," Evelyn announced as I took a seat near the back. "Perhaps you'd like to explain to the community why you feel it's appropriate to engage in violent activities in our neighborhood nature preserve." The way she framed the question made it clear this was a public shaming, not a discussion. I stood up holding a folder of documentation I'd prepared. "I'd be happy to clarify a few things," I said calmly. "First, I was hunting legally, with a valid permit, on private property with the owner's explicit written permission. Second, the land in question isn't HOA property. It belongs to a man named Frank Williams who lives in Florida." I placed copies of my hunting license and Frank's email on the table. Furthermore, the HOA has no jurisdiction to issue fines for activities conducted outside HOA boundaries. I've reviewed our bylaws thoroughly, and there's nothing that gives the association this authority. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Richard Cooper picked up the documents, studying them with a frown. "He seems to have a point about jurisdiction," he said cautiously. "If this occurred outside our property lines, that's where you're mistaken, Mason. Those trails have been part of our community resources for over a decade. We've maintained them, improved them, and our residents have enjoyed them as part of their Green Valley experience. Whether some absentee owner is technically on a deed is irrelevant after so many years of established use." Marcus nodded vigorously in agreement. "Plus, the presence of firearms so close to our homes represents a serious safety concern for all residents, especially children." Jessica Parker stood up dramatically. "I moved here because it was peaceful and safe. Now I'm afraid to let my children play in our yard, knowing there are armed men prowling the woods." I tried to interject that hunting season was limited and that I always followed strict safety protocols, but the narrative had already been established. Eventually, Evelyn called Officer Mike Davis, a 45-year-old local police officer who happened to live in the community. When he arrived, he reviewed my hunting license and confirmed that I had been acting within the law. "As far as hunting regulations go, he's in compliance," Officer Davis explained. "And if he has permission from the landowner, there's no trespassing issue. This would be a civil matter between the HOA and the property owner." This should have ended the discussion, but Evelyn was undeterred. "This isn't about legality, Mike," she insisted. "It's about community standards and the safety of our residents. The HOA board has the authority to enforce those standards, and the fine stands." As the meeting concluded, Evelyn fixed me with a steely gaze. "You have 30 days to pay the fine, Mr. Holloway. If you refuse, we'll be forced to place a lien on your property and pursue legal action." I stood my ground. "I won't be paying a fine that has no legal basis," I replied, "and I suggest the board consult with an actual real estate attorney before making threats." On my way out, I noticed a brochure on the information table titled Green Valley Trails. I picked it up and was shocked to see Frank's entire property clearly marked as Green Valley Nature Trails, with no mention that it was private land. That night, I called Frank Williams again to update him on the situation. He sounded tired and frustrated. I had no idea they were using my land like that, he said. I've never given anyone permission to build trails or install benches. The property taxes keep going up, and I've been thinking about selling anyway. My medical bills are piling up, and I could use the cash. A thought began to form in my mind. Frank, I asked casually, if you're serious about selling, I might be interested in buying. What price would you consider? As we discussed the details, I realized I might have found the perfect way to turn the tables on Evelyn and her HOA. I called Frank, told him I wanted to buy the land. He agreed. We closed the deal fast. And just like that, I owned the very land Evelyn had claimed as her own nature reserve. Trails, benches, bird feeders, all illegal, all built without permission. I sent her a cease and desist letter, gave the HOA 7 days to remove everything or face legal consequences. They panicked. At the emergency meeting, Evelyn spun a tale of me being an outsider destroying their peaceful community. Her husband, Trevor, unveiled plans for the Evelyn Richardson Nature Park, a vanity project funded by residents' donations on my land. I stood up and said, "You've been fundraising for a park on land you don't own." The room exploded. Then things got even darker. An old HOA board member confessed Evelyn had known the land was private for years and buried it. Financial records revealed the HOA had paid over $68,000 to a company owned by Evelyn's husband and Marcus Bennett's sister, without disclosure or bidding. Fraud, embezzlement, lies. The county opened an investigation. Soon after, I leaked everything to the local reporter. The story broke online before the next HOA meeting, and the community turned. Evelyn tried one last stunt, a mass trespass. She rallied 30 people to march onto my land, claiming it was theirs. But I was ready. With Detective Morgan's help, I blocked access and warned trespassers could be arrested. One look at the police cars and Evelyn's crowd melted away. She was finished. Within weeks, Evelyn, Trevor, and Patricia were charged with fraud. The HOA leadership disbanded. New leaders took over, led by Sarah Johnson, the neighbor who'd warned me from the start. I honored my promise. I created a real public trail on part of my land, named it the Frank Williams Memorial Trail. Evelyn pleaded guilty, got probation, repaid over $100K, and left town quietly. Now, neighbors respect me. The HOA actually works for the people, and I still hunt, legally, safely, and with full support. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. And sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up and say, enough. If you enjoyed this underdog story, hit subscribe. More madness coming soon.